Hello, lovely people, and welcome to episode 1 of Comfort in Chaos. This is the first episode of a 3-part series that we're going to do about obsessive compulsive disorder. And that might seem like a random thing to start this general, broad podcast about, but OCD is something that's been a pivotal part of my life, my own healing journey, and just gives a bit of background to who I am and the things I struggle with, which is really what this podcast is about, is how we navigate the world despite our struggles. So in this episode, it's just me here. I'm going to share some of my background and some about obsessive compulsive disorder in general. And then in the following 2 episodes, I'm going to have 2 incredible guests. The first one being my own personal therapist who helped me in my OCD healing journey. And the second one is someone who struggles with OCD herself. And we're going to share our own stories together and answer some questions. So it's going to be really a full deep dive and such a cool way to look at this thing that affects a lot of people. So I hope you enjoy this first episode and stick around for the whole series. And always feel free to reach out and give me any notes, leave a review. Thank you guys so much, and welcome to Comfort in Chaos.
We all are here together just to learn about ourselves and how we can take care of everybody else. Living on a planet that is circling the drain, we do the best we can to not just go insane. It's comfort and chaos.
It's happened to us all. You're driving down the road, it's a sunny day, and you just got on a bridge crossing a large body of water. All of a sudden, for no apparent reason, it occurs to you, what would happen if I steered my car off this bridge? That's what we call an intrusive thought. Now, almost everyone on Earth has intrusive thoughts. You know, like the car example, or like when you're standing at the edge of a cliff and you wonder, what if I just jumped? And most people are able to just let those thoughts go. But what happens when you can't? Well, for 70 million humans on Earth, this is a reality, and it has a name: Obsessive Compulsive Disorder, or OCD as it's often referred to. And we've all heard of OCD. It's that person who needs to keep a clean house to feel more productive, or the girl in class who keeps her colored pencils arranged in the right color order, right? Wrong. OCD is a lot of things, but it is not to be confused with just being a neat freak. In fact, most people who suffer with OCD would tell you a neat freak is the last thing that they would ever be considered, because they're too busy dealing with those intrusive thoughts we talked about before to even think about a clean house or colored pencils being arranged in the right order. Okay, so what is obsessive compulsive disorder? What is OCD? Well, to better explain what OCD is, let's go back to the example of driving on the bridge. A normal person who doesn't suffer from OCD could have that intrusive thought, let it pass, and go on with their day, get to their destination, and probably never think of that thought again. But a person with OCD could have that exact same intrusive thought, and it would torment them over and over and over and over. And that's what we call an obsession. An obsession can be described as an intrusive thought that becomes all-consuming. A feedback loop that has no apparent end in sight, and which causes the person experiencing it extreme levels of discomfort and anxiety. So that gives us the O of OCD, which is obsessions. Now, let's go back to the bridge example one more time. The OCD sufferer has the intrusive thought to drive off the bridge, and they begin to ruminate on it. They begin to panic. They're having severe anxiety, and it feels like there is no escape from the thought. But the sufferer's partner is sitting in the passenger seat, and as the sufferer becomes more and more distressed, they cry out to their partner, "I just had a thought about driving us off of this bridge, and I just can't believe that. I would never do that to you. I would never do that." And the partner quickly consoles the sufferer and says, "Of course you would never do that. I know that. You're not crazy. You're fine. It's normal. You're fine." And all of this exchange doesn't sound like anything out of the norm of just regular calming someone down, right? But you see, this person has just acted out the next stage of OCD, and that is a compulsion. A compulsion is any action, thought, or ritual that can bring you down from that anxious place of obsession. In this case scenario, we'll call this seeking reassurance, because the sufferer needed someone to tell them that they're not crazy, that the thought they had is harmless, and that it's all going to be okay. Because to someone suffering with OCD, not hearing those words feels like death. And compulsions come to OCD sufferers in a myriad of forms, and they can change, and they can morph, and they can look like things that are harmless behaviors to the sufferer and all the people around the sufferer. And that's what makes OCD so incredibly difficult. For example, some people's compulsions may be centered around checking the stove to be on or off, sometimes hundreds of times a day. Or it could be washing your hands to avoid the obsessive thoughts around contamination and germs. Or it could even just be thinking another thought in order to neutralize the thought you had just before. I was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder at 27 years old. An entire 8 years after I was pretty sure I had OCD. And believe it or not, that's actually sooner than most people get diagnosed with OCD. It takes most people 14 to 17 years to receive a proper diagnosis of OCD. And that just further illustrates how difficult OCD is to understand and how misinformed we are as a culture about this thing that affects a lot of people. But anyway, we'll get into that in the episodes to come with some really great guests who have just bundles of knowledge and experience with OCD. But for now, I wanted to just give you listeners a bit of my own background with OCD, and maybe there are some of you out there who suffer from it or have suffered from it in the past, or you have family members who have. And sharing each other's stories is vital to understanding one another and how we can help each other live more empowered lives. I remember the first time I ever thought about death. I think I was about 7 years old, and I was in the back of my mom's car, looking out the window at the vast sky above, and I started to think about space. And then I started to think about, where are we? And why are we here? And how long am I going to be here? And I started to panic. My chest got tight. My thoughts were racing. My heart was racing. I didn't understand anything. I just knew that these thoughts were not okay, and that I needed to be okay. And so I reached for the thing that brought me the most comfort at that age, and it was my blanket. and I grabbed my blanket and I sucked on my 2 fingers, and it all went away for a little while. But for me at that time, a little while was long enough to be okay. Because being okay was all that mattered to me. And so as long as I had my blanket, I could always have a safe place to turn to when the thoughts got dark. And as you could probably guess, I grew up and I couldn't keep a blanket around at all times. It would have been a little bit awkward in middle school. But the thoughts, they stayed with me. And so my brain was looking for any place to find safety from these thoughts that were anything but safe. And being a child of the 90s, by the time I was in high school, the internet was everything. You could learn everything. You could do everything. And so I took my thoughts to the internet. And so Google became my new god. I could go to Google with any question, any concern, any obsession, and I would find exactly what I was looking for: reassurance. I have sought reassurance from so many people and sources in my life, and no one has topped Google yet. So I guess hats off to Google for at least that. But my OCD took off like wildfire. You see, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, this cycle of obsession, compulsion, reassurance. It just keeps going. And so the more you're able to act out your compulsions, the more you're able to obsess, and vice versa. And so the internet just provided my OCD with a treadmill to become ultra marathon levels of fit. And so as I went off to college and did the things most people my age were doing, I thought I could handle it. But I still didn't have an understanding of what exactly was going on inside of me. And so one day in sophomore year of college, when I had an intrusive thought of, what if you have schizophrenia and you're actually a crazy person? Well, as you might imagine, I completely freaked out. I was immediately convinced that I had schizophrenia and that my life was ruined forever. And for any of you who have never heard of schizophrenia, it is a psychotic illness categorized by hallucinations, seeing things that aren't there, hearing things that are not there, having delusions of grandeur, paranoia, etc. It is, without a doubt, a very scary and difficult diagnosis to receive. But you see, I didn't actually have any of those symptoms. But that didn't matter to me. I could figure that out later. The point was, my intrusive thought was telling me that I did have this. And so for the rest of my sophomore year of college, I was consumed with the thought of this. Day in, day out. No breaks allowed. When I wasn't spending all my time Googling about schizophrenia, I would be checking my vision to make sure that everything I'm seeing was actually there. I would even ask my peers, hey, so you know that cone over there, right? Just to acknowledge that the thing I'm seeing was also something they were seeing. That's how convinced and completely consumed I was with my obsessions. In fact, I had to take a look at my college transcript recently, and my sophomore year was my worst grades of my college career. And the reason for that was I wasn't thinking about class. Even when I was sitting in class, I was thinking, is that something in the corner of my eye? Did what she said actually come out of her mouth? I think you're quickly getting the idea that OCD is not arranging colored pencils. About a year later, the thoughts about schizophrenia and the obsessions about having schizophrenia began to wane. And that was exciting because I hadn't been free in so long. But just around that same time, I started to feel a strange sensation in my lower left stomach region. And I didn't know what it was, but I was curious. And so I did what any normal person would do. And I Googled lower left stomach painful or something like that. And, well, as you might be guessing, a new journey for me was just beginning. And for the next 2 years of my life, I spent it absolutely convinced that I had terminal cancer. Mostly Hodgkin's lymphoma, but sometimes I would dabble in melanoma or even a brain tumor that has metastasized to other organs. The point was, I had cancer, and it was coming for my life. And my life mattered to me, so I did what any rational person would do. I searched far and wide for the answer, for the diagnosis, for the prognosis, for anything that would give me certainty, that would give me a path that I could get rid of this thing that was killing me. Between the years of 2015 and 2017, I spent $7,000 on medical examinations, scans, blood tests, you name it, I got it. And what about the people in my life? Well, they did what any loving person would do, which was support me and give me the reassurance I was looking for. It was scary to them to think that someone they loved could have a terminal illness. So they were supporting any measure I was taking to find the answer. But this is OCD's calling card. It wraps itself in this good-looking package of, I'm doing the right thing. But behind that disguise is just a stinky, ravenous beast of obsession and compulsion, and it will eat as long as you feed it. And boy, was I feeding it. Now, I could go on and on with these stories about the different ways OCD has affected my life, from intimate relationships to my health to my occupational status. There isn't one aspect of my life that hasn't been touched by OCD at some point. But I share all of this as an anecdote and a precursor to the episodes to come that are going to be full of stories, experiences, ways of treatments, and pathways out of these cycles. So I don't want to blabber on and on, but I do hope you join me in these next couple episodes as we learn more about OCD and the people who suffer with it, so that in your life, if you ever find yourself challenged with OCD, or you ever find yourself knowing someone who's challenged with OCD, and then you can help that person in a way that actually helps. And also, maybe that next time you're sweeping up crumbs off of a countertop and you tell your friend, "Oh, I'm just so OCD," you can think twice about what that actually means. Anyhow, thanks for listening, and stay tuned for the next few episodes as we dive deeper and get more personal with the OCD community and how we're finding comfort in chaos. Much love, y'all. Till next time.